Everybody, Dr. Roseanne, and It's Gonna Be Okay podcast launch week. I couldn't be more excited and proud about this whole podcast and getting it into the hands of parents like you and I who need tools and resources. And that's what I've been doing for 30 years. So if you haven't listened, jump in. But I want to talk to you about today's episode because it's our first guest episode with Gayle. And everybody needs to add this to their playlist and listen to it. And it's really about what happens when a teacher tells you something that you don't agree with, or maybe is shocking, or is hurtful, or it's the 17th time somebody has told you something is going on with your kid. And Gayle's story is really powerful because it's a story of a mom who said, "Hey, you told me something about my kid. I never heard it. And also, you made a recommendation I completely don't agree with. And I'm listening to my mama gut and I'm making another decision." So, we are often faced. I joke in that going to school meetings, certainly going to IEP meetings and 504 meetings. Sometimes I'd rather get a root canal. And I spent 22 years doing neuropsych testing and really being a pit bull in meetings. They are not fun. But we have our parent teacher conferences and we have meetings. So, what happened with Gayle is she went into a meeting with her husband, and unbeknownst to her, her daughter was having a hard time. Nobody had let her know. And, when the teacher started talking about that she's having some processing difficulties and having some difficulty catching up, she thought they would say, "You need a tutor." But you know what she said when Gayle said, "What do I do for Sophie?" She said, "You should put her on medication." And Gayle was like, "Say what?" And why? And so Gayle became Google MD and went home and searched and got to me, which is amazing. And we love her. Shout out to Gayle for being a parent ambassador and talking about her experience because it helps so many parents in that same boat. And in Gayle's case, she had never had an experience because her daughter is lovely and well-adjusted. All kids are lovely. And now what happened, with her is that, they chose to do neurofeedback and be in our brain behavior reset program, which is amazing. But her next year's conference, I have definitely shed the Klempt happy tears over, because when she went in there, the teacher didn't know that, and what happened with Sophie, she wound up doing all this neurofeedback and her brain just enhanced. It was incredible. Her own private tutor was like, "I don't know what's going on with this kid, but she's like on fire. And now you need to get the brother to do it," is what she said to Gayle. Of course, he came in too. And they're both doing great. But when she went to the next year's conference, Gayle was on pins and needles. Like, what are they going to say? And the mom said, "Hey," the teacher said, "Before we get started, I want you to say something. Here's Sophie's journal. And it's so great. Her writing journal is so great. We're not going to give it back to you. We'll be the example for all the kids coming through." So Gayle burst into tears, and the teacher's like, "What's going on?" And hearing her story is the power of a mother and a parent saying, "Something doesn't sit right. I have to do something different." And this is an easy case of, wait a second, nobody told me anything, and now you're telling me to medicate my kid. Like, it doesn't make sense. That isn't what happens most of the time. Most of the time when I sit down with people, they're telling me year after the year, it's like an almost 11th hour catching up, and then it gets harder and harder, or it looks like a roller coaster. So first quarter and third quarter are great. That's what happens a lot with kids with ADHD and processing issues, because they come in strong, then they wane, and then they get intervention and whatnot. It's in those moments. And I think one of the things that I'm seeing so much out in the world in every aspect related to mental health, kids, adults, is a lot of indecisiveness. And we sort of wait for the crisis to happen before we take action. And, I love Gayle's story because she took action that was congruent with her and her family's values. And she didn't say, there's nothing wrong with my kid. She was like, okay, let me go figure it out. Let me go to an expert and let's figure it out. And of course, she didn't have ADD. That was not the case at all. And we need to take action before crisis happens. I work with a lot of people who are in crisis. I'm happy to help them, right? As long, it's never the problem, it's the attitude towards the problem. But why do people get stuck? Why do people make these decisions, right? And I think it's because we have a teacher who recommends medication, or we have a pediatrician who says, go and do this thing, and there's not really proven anything. We need to start looking at science-backed solutions. And that's what this podcast is about. That's what my whole work is all about. And I want people to have hope. And, I love Gayle's story because she was the change agent. She didn't look for somebody else. Yeah, she got to me, right? Regulating brain is easy, but it's the day-to-day of the work that has to be done in the investment. And I know it's not easy. I'm a mom too of 2 kids. If you're following me, both of my kids, one's a dyslexic, one has PANS from Lyme disease. And, whoever thinks you're going to have a kid with anything? And, instead of dreading these school conferences, think about, what can I do to be proactive instead of reactive, as well as how can I have great conversations with these teachers? How can I be prepared, right? So if you're somebody where every year they're saying the same thing, right, I want you to go in with an agenda. Literally send them an agenda. These are the concerns that I've had. How are we addressing them? Really go in with questions where it is a conversation. There's nothing accusatory, but also know that if your child is struggling in school, there's a school responsibility and there's laws and protections around that, IEP, 504, but we also have home responsibilities. And that means that, you do have to go and search and find a trusted professional. And whether you're working one-on-one or you're finding guidance, at least at this point through this podcast, that's okay. You just need to take some action and be consistent about it. But I'm in here just sharing about Gayle's story because it's a beautiful story of parent empowerment, and the outcome is so amazing. And this kid did not have to have medication that was her QEEG brain map showed was not needed. She did not have ADHD, and we didn't have to go down that road. And this is in the same week that this podcast has come out that I've had 2 people who had very severe psychiatric reactions to Adderall, and life-changing psychiatric reactions where it's taken years to even get even close to where they were. So medications, right? I'm not opposed to medications. I'm opposed to them being the first line of defense. And this case is a perfect example of exactly why they shouldn't be the first line of defense. Didn't have a prior history. First time you're hearing there's a problem. And guess what? Her brain showed, because we checked under the hood, that it wasn't needed. So wherever you are in your journey is exactly where you need to be. And I want you to be a Google MD. I want you to download this episode. I want you to listen, and I want you to empower. And of course, we have a contest. So you can go to drroseanne.com/contest, or you can go to the podcast page, and you can enter to win a MacBook, because we want to reward people for helping other mothers and parents out. So start thinking differently. I hope this opened up your eyes to some different solutions. And certainly I'm active in the community or Facebook group and on our social pages. Ask away. So sending everybody hope, love, and light. Great episode. Thank you, my friend Gayle, for sharing your story and helping so many parents out.